Good afternoon and welcome to the Early Diversity Internship Program Situational Judgment Questionnaire webinar. And Good afternoon and welcome to the Early Diversity Internship Program Situational. This is Orisi from Elevation Networks. I am delighted to be hosting today's webinar. And before I get started, I'm just going to give a bit of an introduction about myself in terms of who I am and what my role is at Elevation Networks. So as I said in my email, I'm going to be your coach, so working with applicants through the application process, and that falls into what I do. So I do two things within at Elevation Networks. One of that is providing support and training and coaching to candidates who are applying to various internship and graduate programs within our network, as well as working and building relationships with our employer partners who are keen to work with us to provide more opportunities to our graduates and students. Those are two things that I do at Elevation Networks. And today's webinar, we're going to be going through the Civil Service Early Diversity Internship Program Situational Judgment Test practice. And I am delighted to welcome all of you who are online currently. Just want to take time to commend you for taking the time out of your schedule to attend the webinar. And I am confident that you will go away with something of value from today's session. But before we go any further, I'm just going to take the time just to understand what you would like to get out of the session. So what I'd like for you to do in the next few minutes or so, just to let me know, what would you like to get out of today's session, and what would a successful webinar look like? So it's going to take the next few seconds just to, if you could share that with me, that would be fantastic. Also, you have the option to share audibly, where everyone can hear you, or you can type it depending on what you feel comfortable with. So if I can suggest that use the chat button to respond to what you'd like to get out of the webinar, that would be fantastic. Whilst I'm waiting, I'm also keen to hear keen to understand people's people's understanding of what the civil service is, and in terms of what the civil service does. If you could also share that with me, that would be fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to proceed with the webinar, and just to go through what to expect and what the session will cover. So firstly, we'll start by, partly what to expect from today's webinar is an understanding of the application stages, understanding of the civil service competency framework and what the civil service are looking for in the situational judgment questionnaire, as well as looking at the key dates, so the deadline is now officially over. However, as I mentioned in the email, is that you have up to 5 days to complete the application, so long as you started applying before the deadline. And so this is what to expect. So I'm going to go through what the program is, and go through what to expect in the test, what tips in terms of how to be successful, and how to approach the test, what you should be aware of before actually taking on the test. So the Early Diversity Internship Program is an opportunity to learn about the civil service. The interns get the unique opportunity to shadow fast streamers at work and gain a real insight into their role. So fast streamers are people almost like graduates, or almost like people it's a leadership program for graduates and professionals who want to work in the civil service to learn more about the civil service and as a route to become more, to progress into a senior leadership role within the civil service. So the Early Diversity Internship Program is a way to gain insights as a first-year student, and then if you do decide to go on to work in the civil service when you finish university, so by shadowing the fast stream, you get to learn more about their role and to see if it's something that might be of an interest to you after you finish university. And this is a 1 week, i.e. a 5 working day internship program based in London. So it's a series of stimulating course. So what includes on the day during that 5 days would be a series of stimulating corporate networking and social events, an assessment and survival workshop with all you need to know about applying for graduate vacancies, which is also a really good thing to do, particularly now it gives you one step ahead from when you get into your final year. So you have that understanding already of how to apply to various graduate programs, even if you decide not to continue working at the civil service. As I mentioned, you'll be allocated with a fast stream body to provide mentoring and support, which is extremely valuable to really learn from someone who's already working and to understand the challenge that they've gone through, learning tips and things that you should be aware of from when you do finish university, and also showing the general experience being on the program. And there's also going to be an opening and closing reception where all EDIP interns who are on the program get to meet together, network, be inspired by high-profile speakers, you meet senior people within the civil service, and really just to build a good exposure and network to the world of work from when you finish university. And as I mentioned, this is London-based, and it is not a paid role. However, you have all your expenses paid and covered. So who can apply to this? This is open to first-year students and people from a Black, Asian, minority, ethnic group, as well as candidates with any form of disability, either physically or mental. So I'm really keen to hear from you guys in terms of, were you able to submit your application before the deadline? Were you able to complete the application before the deadline? Just give me a yes, just to ensure that that'll be really helpful. Great, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so now I've gone through what the program is and what to expect. Before I go any further, I'm going to play a quick video about what the civil service is. So I'm just going to change from this screen to play a quick video shortly. So bear with me. I'll be back in a few seconds.
It really surprised me to see something like this in the civil service. It's very Google.
It's not what I expected. It's not more than I thought it would be.
Finding out that it's not that sort of stuffy, suit-wearing culture would actually attract a lot of young people to the civil service.
I was very shocked. It's an atmosphere that wants to work here.
Seeing the different types of work you can do in the civil service.
How much did you take the time to do?
Like, no matter how small it is.
Taken us at people seeing that it's going to be actually it's a very open office. It's a light and colourful office. Above all, it's comfortable and relaxed. I didn't expect that. I feel like civil service isn't making it workforce.
In learning, developing your own skills, working on incredibly exciting technologies.
at the forefront of all the new things that people is developing, so it's what's coming in the future.
I'm actually really surprised. It is definitely more than tax tips and driver's license. It's very open and honest about all of their work and work really hard at what they do.
I think if people knew about the civil service doing this sort of thing, I think definitely be happy to join it.
So this is Bernie. We use it in all of our science, technology, engineering and maths and STEM outreach programs.
It was great to see the Lego robots because they just made STEM and coding come alive. And especially that they go with the STEM outreach program to young women in particular is just really interesting and really good thing to see. I think there's a difference for STEM.
People, I mean, my dad was a miner, and he was a cleaner, and then just about ever worked in office, certainly like the civil service, and certainly like the it's just people like people it's all walked to life. There's nothing like this. It's just diverse.
And it's more insight into how it's the new reformed civil service.
As ONS has shown me, it's really part of the civil service is really diverse for everyone.
So this is a short video about the civil service, and I'm going to go back to the presentation slide. Bear with me. So that video gives you a bit of an insight into what the civil service is in terms of the culture. And again, most people tend to think that when they think about the civil service, they tend to think about it as a very serious, boring place to work at and not very open and reflective of society. However, that video gives you an insight into it. You know, as one of the people in the video made reference to, that the civil service is like Google. It's very modern. It's not what they expected. So it gives you an idea, you know, what some of the offices look like. And so that's a bit about the civil service. And what I'm now going to focus on is how to be successful with on the situational judgment test. One thing that some of you, this might be a new terminology to yourselves, the word being competencies. So this is something that is a word that describes, you know, as a set of skills and knowledge and behaviors that lead to people performing in a successful way. So competencies is something that every organization have a range of competencies, i.e. skills, knowledge and behaviors that they have put in place, that they expect, that they deem as a way that, you know, if their employees demonstrate these traits, that they will be successful in the workplace. And what they do before bringing in new members of staff into the organization is to measure them against the various sets of competencies. So this is why, so things like the situational judgment test, all the questions are set to measure you to see how, as a potential applicant to the civil service, how, if you have the skills, if you reflect that, you know, you demonstrate the skills and the knowledge that they're looking for and the behaviors that they're looking for. And if you demonstrate these things, automatically you'll be successful, you'll be selected to work for the organization. This is just what they do, similar to, you know, this is what just the standard process that they follow. So things like interviews are all designed to really see if your skills, knowledge and behaviors are suited to that of the organization. Often people feel like the reason why they don't get jobs is because they're not good enough. That's not often the case. In most cases, because that they haven't taken out the time to really understand the organization's competencies and what they are looking for. And today we're going to go through, I'm delighted to say we will be going through what the civil service are looking for, so that you understand before completing the application form what they are looking for in an ideal candidate. And then you can be fully prepared, equipped and confident when responding to the questions in the situational judgment test. And we'll get the chance to practice some later on as well. So I'm going to go through this quickly. So competencies are the skills, knowledge and behaviors that lead to successful performance. the competency framework sets out how we, in this case, the civil service, want people to work. And the framework is used for things like recruitment, performance management, and development discussions, and for decisions about progression. So one thing to be aware of before you apply to any job is to look for the organization's competencies. Sometimes they have different words such as their core values, their beliefs, and then what else, or behavioral capabilities. So they use different terminologies, however, it all means the same thing. So what you want to do, first thing to look for is what are the competencies, what are the skills they're looking for, what's the knowledge that they expect the applicants to have, and what are the behaviors they're expecting to see. So in the case of the civil service, these are the list of competencies that they have put in place. So there are 10 competencies in total, broken into 3 different sections. One is setting strategic directions, and one is engaging people and delivering results. So what they look for is people who think strategically, who think about how they can achieve results, how they can make things better, to ensure that they understand how their role has an impact in the wider organization's objectives and goals. Unless you are self-employed or working for yourself, when working for a company, you'd be expected to work with different people, just like at university, which you may have already experienced, working with other people on your course to do coursework together or the project together. So just similar to the reasons why they do this at university is to prepare you to learn how to work with people, so that when you start applying for jobs, you can demonstrate to your employers, potential employers, that, oh, I have experience in working with people. Yeah, for example, working in my group task. So this is where you can demonstrate your skills in able to knowledge and behavior, in able to actually demonstrate your skills, knowledge, and behavior in working with people. So they look for people able to engage. Essentially, the reason people go to do so in an effective way, able to do so managing a quality service, people able to deliver at pace, and people who are able to achieve as their objectives and goals, and people also, how much can I get for my pound? That's this value for money. You've generated £19 on that £1. So that's an example of depth. What do they mean? So when the civil service says seeing the bigger picture, it means that it's about having an in-depth understanding and knowledge of the organization's objectives and the wider public needs and the national interest. It is about focusing your contribution on activities which will meet civil service goals and deliver the greatest values. So when you're being asked questions about in the situational judgment test, so we're looking at, okay, do you demonstrate your ability to see the bigger picture, for example? And then number 2, what does changing and improving mean? So changing and improving means that, people, it's about taking an initiative and being innovative and seeking out opportunities to create effective change. So it's about learning from what has worked as well as what has not worked, and being open to change and improvement and working in a smarter, more focused ways. So that is what changing and improving means. Some of this may not be relevant, especially for first years applying to the EDIP program. So the third one is, but I'm going to go through them anyway so you're familiar with the different ones. So the third one is making effective decisions. So making effective decision means, using sound judgment and evidence and knowledge to arrive at accurate, expert and professional decisions and advice. It's about, being careful and thoughtful about the use and protection of government and public information to ensure it is handled securely and with care. The reason why this is important is the civil service core values are honesty, integrity, impartiality, and objectivity. And because of the nature of organizing that the civil service is, their role is to support the government of the day. They are not the government, but they're there to support the government of the day. I.e., so the current government is the Conservative Party, and the civil service are people who support the government to deliver on its policies. And so they cannot have any sort of political affiliation because they serve the general public. And this is why they have to be honest with on the day-to-day operation. They have to live by integrity. They also have to be impartial, meaning they cannot use their own opinion or what they think is better, or let's say they have a different political views from that of the government of the day. They cannot allow the political views to shape and influence the make using. This would be new to some of you, because normally, naturally, when we're asked we respond to it based on how you think it would work. However, what the civil servants are looking for are judgments, i.e., how do they come to make decisions? Do they use evidence, i.e., based on information that's been provided to them? Are they able to ask questions on the situational judgment test and use evidence to come to their decision rather than using their own opinion? So this is what they measure against how people come to make decisions. So this is perhaps the most important one on a part of all the competencies or the situational judgment test improving. So people are effective in this area, take initiative. So I've already gone through this. So the next one is leading and communicating. So it's like looking at effectiveness is about, in this area, it's about showing pride and passion for public service, communicating purposefully and direction with clarity, integrity, and enthusiasm. So it's about showing that, when you're representing the civil service, you're representing an organization. So it's being positive in how you represent that organization externally in front of people. So they want to look at, actually, why do you want to work for the civil service, for example? It would be one thing that they'll be looking for, maybe in the latter stage of the application process. And next stage is collaborating and partnering. What this means is people who are able to, work within the team, people who are team players, being able to work collaboratively, sharing information appropriately, and building supportive and trusting and professional relationships with colleagues and a wide range of people within and outside the civil service, whilst having the confidence to challenge assumptions. Meaning, are you someone who contributes positively to the team? Do you look how you can, how do you add value to the team? So it's looking at so going back to the example I gave about, at university, you can give examples where you feel you've demonstrated really good teamwork, capability, during your time at university. So that's one way. So the next one is, I'm going to go through this quickly, but you can read about this. If you want to find out more about this, you can go on in the email that was sent yesterday. There is an attachment titled Civil Service Competency Framework, which has a list of all of them. And building capability for all is looking at how one, focus on continuous learning for themselves, i.e. how they improve themselves on a regular basis. For example, reading might be one way, could be reading the news, reading articles, just to keep your knowledge fresh and up to date to what's happening in the news or in society. And one of the main one at the moment is Brexit. So it's looking at how they look for people who take the steps in improving the knowledge on an ongoing basis, because in improving your knowledge, you're able to actually add more value to the organization. And the next one is managing a quality service. And managing quality service simply means, valuing and modeling professional excellence and expertise to deliver service objectives and taking account of diverse customer needs and requirements. And the next one, achieving commercial outcomes, means that you're able to, maintain an economic long-term focus in all activities. It's having a commercial, financial, sustainable mindset to ensure all activities and service are delivering added value and working to stimulate economic growth. Simply put, is whatever you're given is looking at how you utilize that to achieve more results. So if you're given £1, in what ways can you use the £1 to achieve more? So if there are ways where you've demonstrated your ability to achieve commercial outcomes, you can give that as an example. Again, this will probably be later on towards in the interview stages. And finally, is delivering value for money. What this means is focusing on delivering timely performance with energy and taking responsibility and accountability for quality outcomes. For all staff, is about working to agreed goals and activities and dealings with challenges in a responsive and constructive way. So these are all the competencies and what the civil service is looking for, which is vital in you being successful in the situational judgment test. Failure to understand this or to study it would most likely result to being unsuccessful in the test. However, studying it, understanding it, and before responding to the test could potentially increase your chances of being successful. So, what is the situational judgment test? If this is your first time doing it, a situational judgment test is you're basically asked to decide on the best course of action given some work-based scenarios. So you're given a range of scenarios as if you're in the workplace, and they'll ask you a question: what would the best course of action to take? And you'll be given a list of 4 options, which you'll be asked to choose one that you think is the most effective option to take in response to the scenario that's been set, or one that's the least effective option to take. The trick about this is all the answers could potentially be effective. And often what you would find, especially when we practice the test soon, is you find that some of these things would make sense. You think, well, I would do it this way. And the danger is, this is where people tend to fall. They're not asking actually how you would do it. They're asking you how a civil servant, if you're a civil servant, how you would address it. This is why referring back to the competencies is important. So I mentioned earlier, making effective decisions, which is one of the key aspects that will be assessed on in the situational judgment test, is looking at when you're making decisions, do you use evidence? Do you use knowledge to arrive at an accurate, expert and professional decisions and advice, i.e. one that is not based on your opinion or how you think it should be done, or rather you're using evidence that's in the question to come to a conclusion. So there's basically trying to just test your sound judgment, basically. And this is why this is so important. So when responding to this question, you want to look for the one that you think is the most effective based on your sound judgment on the questions and picking out the clues from the questions. We'll get a chance to practice very shortly. And so that's that with the situation judgment test. Again, this would be the competencies I've been assessed, as I mentioned, is decision making and other competency areas, but the key one would be decision making effective decision. So the tips when practicing the situation judgment test are, try practice questions on the FastStream website before you start your test, and carefully read the given scenarios and answer options. So read it carefully before you respond. There'll be a total of 25 questions in the real test, and it's not timed. However, they suggest that it should take roughly about 30 minutes to complete. It is not a timed test, but it should take roughly about 30 minutes. So you really want to read it carefully and read the question, read the answers, the options carefully before choosing one that you think is most effective and least effective. And if you get it right, if you get the answer correct, you get 1 mark. If you get it wrong, if you get one that's close to the right answer, you get half a mark. If you get the wrong answer, you get no mark at all. So the pass mark is ranging between, they suggest to aim to get about, say, 85% correct. It is so it's also what to also consider is what would be the best responses when responding. And as I mentioned earlier, use the civil service competencies as criteria for guiding your responses. Don't respond based on your opinion, respond based on being guided by the competencies in the framework. So that's all the tips really when completing the situational judgment test. As well as the situational judgment test, you'll be given a behavioral questionnaire, unless if you have a form of a learning disability. For example, you could request to be, so you can make a declaration of for special circumstances, which may result in you being exempted from completing the behavioral test. However, this is something that will come alongside the situational judgment test. Unlike the situational judgment test, you cannot prepare for the behavioral test because you're being asked to rate yourself against the civil service competencies. So with this, it's about thinking about your own personal qualities in relation to the competency areas and responding as honestly in terms of your preferred style of working when you're at your best. Again, this is untimed. However, don't spend too long on any given question, and it's roughly expected to take about 30 minutes to complete the test. The civil service in this set part of the behavioral test will assess on all competency areas. So this is why it's important to study all of them before doing the test. As I said, this is now, the deadline is now over. But the good thing is you have up to 5 days from now to complete, from when you fill an application to complete your test. So that's all for now. Happy to take any questions before we practice the test. Do you have any questions that you'd like me to answer? And if so, please feel free to ask. This is your chance to make sure you have everything answered. There is no such thing as a silly question. You know, there's a chance to ask everything that you want to get across. And then once we've done so, we can go on to do a practice test and explain how to approach it. So any questions for now? If it's a no, just type a no just to let me know that you don't have any question. Do you have any question? If not, I will proceed. Okay, so I'm going to now upload the test, the practice test question, and we'll share the link with you in the meantime. So please click on this link to access the test. The link I've just posted on the chat box. Click on that to access the test and look for, when you open the link, scroll down slightly, just slightly down, and you see another link that says practice questions for the situational judgment questionnaire. Let me know when you have, let me know if when you've been able to click on the link. Excellent, so we can get started. So just gonna go through, as you can also read it on your screen. So this is a preview of the types of questions you'll be faced with during the situational judgment test. And in total, there are 5 questions in this open access preview test. Each question takes the form of a scenario one might face whilst working in the role of a fast streamer. And each scenario is followed by a set of 4 response options. For each scenario, you are required to select the option which is the most effective response and the option which is the least effective response. The most and least effective responses have been determined by subject matter experts who are familiar with the types of scenarios fast streamers may face in their role. In the real assessment, you'll be presented with 25 scenarios which are on-timed. So getting started, this preview test consists of 5 scenarios and should take about 5 minutes to complete. In this preview test, you will be asked to complete the most and least effective responses. You will then receive feedback on the most and least effective responses which have been determined by subject matter experts. Remember, there are 5 scenario questions with 4 responses each. Please select one most effective and one least effective response. And when making your selection, think about how you would behave at work if faced with a similar situation. The test is not timed. Just going to go back to the third bullet point. It says to think, when making your selection, think about how you would behave at work if faced with a similar situation. Just to add a bit to that is, although it says this may come across to some readers as respond to how you would approach it if it was you. However, one thing you want to bear in mind is when responding to the questions, what's a civil service looking for are people who are able to demonstrate sound judgment. And what they mean by this is people able to demonstrate, make decisions based on evidence and knowledge to arrive at an accurate expert professional decisions, i.e. being careful, thoughtful about the use of and protection of government and public information to ensure it is handled securely and with care. For us, it's about reaching evidence-based strategies and so on and so forth. So I think that's something to bear in mind before starting the test. And when selecting responses, options are mostly less effective. You can use your mouse to select your chosen option. Again, that's as states on the screen. So what we're now going to do is to get you to spend the next 5 minutes just to have a go at the test. And once you're finished, we'll then go through. I'll go through the answers and explain explain why, see what your answers are. If they are correct, high five. And if they're not, we have to then touch upon and explain why and how to come to certain decisions. What you'd notice, because it's a test question, it will give you the answers at the bottom of your screen up when you press next. However, what I'd suggest to do is to write down the answers that you chose first, so that way it makes it easier to just have a more honest feedback. And it's okay if you don't get it correct. I'm not expecting it to get it correct at this point in time. This is more just to get a feel for how it's done, and make a note of the answers that you chose, and then we'll be able to go through the answers later on. So what I'll do is just give a quick example. Actually, I'm not going to give you examples. We're going to give you to have a go first of all, and then we'll go through it later on. So the time now is 12:38. I'll say maybe give it 7 minutes. So we'll come back at 12:45. Let's give it 7 minutes to complete the test. So we'll come back at 12:45, and let me know when you are finished. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Have you finished, or just would you like some extra time? Okay, so we'll come back in about 2 minutes. Excellent, thank you. So can you share your answers with me? What answer you chose? Let's start with number one. What were your answers for number one? What was the most effective and least effective? Okay, option D as the most effective. What was your option for least effective? So C as the least effective. Can you explain to me, would you be able to explain to me what made you choose D as the most effective and C as the least effective? I'm keen to hear. Again, there is no, it's not about being right or being wrong, or it's just to really have to understand your thinking behind it. And then I'll go through the logic on how to choose the why, number one, why most effective is C and why the least effective is A. Okay, so I thought that checking in with someone more experienced and knowledge would ensure that you had the authority to change the document. Okay, so I'm going to explain why. I can see why you would choose that. I'm going to explain why, and I'm also going to make reference to some of the points that I made earlier about making a sound judgment and refraining from, and also paying attention, so using evidence when responding to making decisions. So the question set reads, your line manager has asked you to provide a summary of a 20-page European policy document. She needs this to prepare for an important meeting that is happening in the near future and does not have the time to read the whole document. So then it says, however, the document is not well written and is presented in an order that you feel is not very logical. Although it has been agreed at, it says, although it has been agreed at a senior level. What should you do? So what the evidence there, it says, is a summary document. It's for a European Commission policy. Says the line manager needs this to prepare for an important meeting that is happening in the near future and does not have the time to read the whole document. Says, although the document, so there's another twist that although it is not well written, this has been done intentionally to cause slightly confusion. So although it's not well written and it's not presented in an order that you feel is not logical. So again, this is a temptation for you to make you bring in your own opinion. However, they want to see how you would refrain from just using an opinion, but also paying attention to what's in the actual question in itself. The key there is it says it has been agreed at a senior level. So going back to the option you chose, so D as the most effective says arrange a meeting with your line manager to raise your concerns about the structure of the document before starting the work. Again, the clue, so that's effective. That makes sense. That's something that you could resolve, you know, as a way to actually resolve the situation. Expressing your concerns, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what you want to do is to compare the answers to the other ones to see which one is the most effective. Remember at the beginning I said that all the answers are potentially effective, but what they want to see is the one that you think is the most effective out of all the options. They're not saying that the rest are not effective. Normally there's one that is not effective at all, or, you know, or one is, well, the kids actually, which one you think is the most effective, which one you think is the least effective out of all of them. The clue there is they're all potentially effective, but one is most and one is least. So let's compare it to C, which is the most effective option. So it says create the summary in the existing order, ensuring it is clearly written. There was probably a reason for why it was presented in this way. So if you compare this option to the question, the scenario in itself, it says create the summary in the existing order, which follows exactly what was said. It says your line manager asked to provide a summary of a 20-page document. She needs this to prepare for a meeting that is happening in the future and does not have the time to read the whole document. So by creating a summary, you're ticking that what was asked for you in the first place. And it says there was probably a reason for why it has been presented in this way, which goes back to the last sentence, which is, although it has been agreed at a senior level, it says, although the document is not well written and is presented in an order that you feel is not very logical, although it has been agreed at a senior level. So again, you don't know why it has been changed, or you don't know why it's been presented in this way, but the key is just to deliver based on what's being asked of you, because it has been agreed at a senior level. So if you compare that to D, compare C to D, you see why C is more effective, because it is more aligned to what's being asked compared to D. So by arranging a meeting, expressing your concerns, it goes against where it says the document has been agreed at a senior level. You don't know why it's been written in this way, and she just wants a summary. So sometimes in reality is you'll be given tasks to do at work, which may not make sense to you, which may make you feel a bit conflicted, but it's probably been given to you in that way. The person who's given that work, they probably know why they've done it in that way, and it's following, you know, the order they've given. Obviously, if there's a concern and it's not clear, you can still ask for clarification, which is the option D. However, because there's another option that's more effective is there, so it's, in this case, you would choose the most effective option, which is C. So if you go back to why A is the least effective, so A says rewrite the document before creating the summary so that it is easier to understand if others pick it up in the future. So by rewriting the document, you don't know why it's been presented in the way it was. And imagine giving this document to your line manager to read, especially in a meeting, and then realizes that it's been completely changed. Imagine the confusion and the impact this could potentially have in the meeting. So this is why A is the least effective. Whereas option B is it says write the summary of the document, but change the order. So at least you're writing the summary, but you're changing the order. So it still ticks one of the boxes based on the scenario. So this is why B would not be the least effective. However, A completely goes against what's been set. So this is why A will be least effective. So does that give you an idea of how to respond to the question? Was that helpful? Just give me a quick yes, because we're running short of time. I'm just conscious to use the time that we have to go through another question with you. Was it clear? And if not, would you like me to explain, provide more clarification, explain anything further? Yes, it was clear. Fantastic. Okay. So number 2, it says you're responsible for organizing and coordinating the regular meetings of across the park. So what was your answer for number 2? So what's the most effective and what was your least effective? So for number 2, I put option A as the most effective. And what's your least effective? So number 2, you got the least effective correct. Well done. That is good. So what made you choose option A as the most effective? Just a quick summary of a quick one line actually why you chose A, and then I explain why B is the most effective. And also it'd be good to hear why you chose D as the least effective as well. I'm keen to hear your reasoning behind choosing D as the least effective. And going back to your answer for your response for number 1, the last bit where it says I had the, having a meeting with someone experienced would ensure that you have the authority to change the document. Again, the request didn't ask for the document to be changed. It just says to summarize it. But this is why, again, that would just, I'll just add that to your reasoning for choosing the options that you chose. There, can you provide me a quick summary of why you chose? Okay, so it says, I thought that them adding their own items of interest would get them more involved and more inclined to want to attend. You are on the right track. It shows that you are getting a good understanding of this process. So you chose A. So it says email each of the directors, encouraging them to add their own items. In a way, it's on the right track. That's effective. That's an effective option. It could address. But the key is you always want to look for the one that is the most effective, that is more close, or that's closely in line with the scenario. In this case, the scenario is director level attendance is requested. It's important for them to be at the meeting. However, they're delegating the attendance to people lower than them. So again, it's causing the concern here. Yes, emailing them could be actually a way to get them interested, which you are correct. However, if you compare option B, it says where possible, speak to each of the directors prior to the main meeting to discuss the issues of importance to them on the agenda so they see the benefit of attending. The difference between A and B is A, actually just out of interest, have you noticed the difference between A and B now? It's just a key word. There's just one word in A and one word in B that's just different. Have you noticed it? So A says email each of the directors, whereas B says speak to each director. So what's the notice? What have you noticed in the difference? I'm keen to hear what you've observed as the difference between option A and option B. Again, it's absolutely fine. This is not to judge whether you get it wrong. I'm just keen to, yes, it is about emailing, which could be easily forgotten and overlooked. You are spot on. That is 100% correct. So that's the reason why B would be most effective compared to A. And you got, so I'm keen to hear why you chose D as the least effective. Excellent. You are completely, you're spot on. That's exactly, that's correct. So saying that I thought that option D was simply reminding them of the information they already had and did nothing to engage or encourage attendance. So that's completely correct. So well done on that. Should we try one more option? Should we try one more answer or sorry, one more question? Would you like to try one more? Okay, excellent. We'll try number 3. So well done on number 2. So it shows that you're having a really good understanding of the process. So what were your most effective and least effective for number 3? And if you could also share me the reasons why you chose those as your options as well, that would be fantastic. Could you please share your reasons for choosing those? Okay, so I chose option A because I thought that it directly targeted the issue, which was that people were fed up with the administrative burden. So simplifying the process makes people happier and more willing to comply. Okay, and what was your reason for choosing option C as your least effective? And you got both correctly, by the way. Excellent. This is excellent. So yeah, you got both answers you gave are correct. And again, what this demonstrates is now you're demonstrating your ability to make sound judgment you know, based on evidence and you know, based on evidence and based on an objective view. So this is really good. This is what exactly the civil service are looking for. People who are able to demonstrate sound judgment. What you're doing correctly shows that you have a good understanding of how to make effective decisions. So if you continue in this vein, you will have a really good chance of being successful in the situational judgment test. Would you like to try one more, or are you happy with what you've done so far? Excellent. So before we leave, do you have are there any questions that you'd like for me to answer? Do you have any questions? Okay. On that note, I just want to say, wish you all the best in your application. If you have any further questions between now and when you do your test, this is the email to reach us on. So send us an email to faststream@elevationnetworks.org, and we will do our absolute best to ensure that we respond to your questions as soon as possible. Yeah, all the best, and continue studying the civil service competency framework document. Read through, practice more of the tests, keep practicing it, and only start the test when you feel confident and ready to do so, but ensure that you do it within the time deadline that they will give you. So you have 5 days to complete it. So keep an eye on the time they've set for you. I just want to say all the best, and let us know how you get on. And so in terms of the next steps after you complete the test, the next stage is a telephone interview if you are successful. And the telephone interview usually takes place in January. So you'll be informed in January if you are successful, and that's when the telephone interview will be conducted. And yeah, if you have any questions in the meantime, please let us know, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.